Hey, Pat LaFemin with Bowsite.com. I'm here with the brand new Mathews Phase 4, the best shooting bow I have ever shot. And I am shooting the best I had ever shot. And I have gone from a 30-yard max shooter to probably a 60-yard max shooter. And I did it in 3 months and had absolutely nothing to do with the bow, although this bow is freaking phenomenal. I did 4 things. I really took a deep dive on my arrows because I was not happy with my arrows. I took a deep dive into a bow tune to figure out why I couldn't get an absolute perfect arrow flight. Then I started really examining my release and started trying new things that I had resisted for 40 years. And now I am shooting better than ever. And then finally I tore my form apart because my form has just been terrible and I knew it. So I'm gonna share with you the 4 things that I did because maybe it might give you guys some tips. And hopefully you can break out of that plateau if you happen to be in one like I was. So let's get started. So I'm sitting in my blind in eastern Ohio and a big fat doe comes in. I've got 2 doe tags in my pocket. It's snowy, it's just beautiful, just a beautiful night. I open the door to my blind, I pull back and I shoot, and I don't hit the doe perfectly, but I hit it good enough. Doe goes 30 yards, lays down, 20 minutes later it's dead. But I'm thinking to myself, I could have done better. You know, why did I rush that shot? Why did I punch the trigger? Why was my arrow porpoising a little bit? And I just decided that I had enough. Anybody that's hit a plateau and just can't get any better gets very frustrated, and you just decide, that's it. I'm gonna tear everything down and start over. So that's what I did. I identified 4 key areas of improvement. Number 1, I wanted a perfect flying arrow, and by perfect, I mean perfect. Number 2, I wanted a bow that was tuned perfectly to the arrow, something I was never able to achieve before, which is broadheads, field points, and barrel shafts hitting in the exact same spot. I wanted to achieve that. The 3rd thing I wanted to do was to address my release. And the 4th thing is my form, my grip, my release, all needed to change. So those were the 4 areas I decided to change. So let's start with arrows. My Phase 4 was delivered at 70 pounds with a 27-inch draw, which is exactly what the V3X was. I tied in my peep and grabbed the arrows that I've been shooting, and they should have flown the same, but they didn't, okay? So I needed to do a deeper dive, and I decided to start looking at different arrows. So I went on Bowsite and I asked all the guys that I know and trust and respect on Bowsite, which there's several, and I started to see a trend. So one of the things I saw was everybody was talking about these Easton Axis match grade shafts. I ordered a dozen arrows and I started building them, and I was really impressed with the quality that I saw with the spine consistency, the weight consistency. I decided to do a deeper dive on additional arrow components. So I wanted to look at fletch configurations, fletch types. What I ended up with was the Easton Axis match grade shafts, 4-inch wraps, Q2I fusion vanes with a 3-degree left offset in the 4 fletch configuration. And also I really liked the iron will hit inserts along with the shot collars to kind of tighten up and firm up that end of the arrow. The second thing I needed to improve on was my bow tune. Before I fletched my arrows, I spent a week bare shaft tuning. On paper, I had a significant right tear, about 1 inch long, which is absolutely unacceptable. Moving the rest helped somewhat, but I was going far beyond Mathews' recommendation of 13/16 inch from the riser. So I need to go back to the drawing board. So I started looking at my top hats. Top hats are the bushings on the Mathews bows. There's 2 on the top, there's 2 on the bottom. I started with the top and I swapped them out. I got lucky, I just swapped out the tops. I swapped the left for the right for the left, and I ended up with an absolutely perfect bullet hole. Mission accomplished. I've now got perfect arrows, and look at the arrow flight here. This is one tip that you guys, I can tell you, if you take a GoPro camera and you put it at high speed, at dusk, with a lighted knock, you can see if you have perfect arrow flight or if there's some variation. It's the best way that I know to check it is with those little GoPros. So that's what I did here. So I knew my bow and my arrows were tuned perfectly. But every so often, I flung a shot. So that made me look at the 3rd problem, which is my release. With my finely tuned Phase 4 and my new arrow build, I was shooting better than ever. Still, every few arrows, my index finger release was sloppy. So I'd always heard about the thumb releases. Everybody had always told me how good they were. I just was resistant to change. I liked my index finger release, so I wouldn't try it. So this was a year where, since I was tearing everything down anyways, I decided to try it. And I wish I had done this 15 years ago. My shooting has never been better. I took to it immediately. I don't think it took me more than a day to get comfortable with it. No more punching the release. So that's the third thing I did. The fourth issue that I needed to address is going to be a lot harder, and that was my form. So I death grip the bow. I do this, right? Just give it a chokehold. I'm choking the hell out of it. Did this for years, but that needed to change. So I started looking at different grips. One that I found to be the best for me was Levi Morgan style of grip. It's a variation of the high wrist with the finger sticking out, but you are still gripping the bow. And I found that to be the best grip for me. The other thing that I needed to do was I needed to work on not only my grip, but my release. So using the thumb release now, I had a much cleaner release. You know, with my thumb, I had it to the point where I can get that thing right to the edge. And what I loved about the thumb release is it made it very natural for me to just squeeze my back shoulder blades together. And it is the cleanest release I have ever had. Between the arrows, the bow tune, changing to a thumb release, and then the form practice that I did, it took me about 3 months. I have gone now from a 30-yard max shooter to a 60-yard max shooter. Now I needed to know if I could translate all of that change into a stressful hunting situation. I would find out twice. First in Ohio. I called in a dinner Jake and made an absolutely fantastic shot on him. First bird in Ohio after 3 years. A week later, I headed to my New York property where I called in the biggest tom of my life, a 26-pound gobbler with 1-inch spurs. And I took him with a Texas heart shot that put the giant gobbler down in 10 steps. I was thrilled because it proved to me that all of that change I was able to translate into a adrenaline-filled hunting situation, and that made all the difference in the world. So my takeaway for you guys is this, is don't be afraid to tear it all down. Don't be afraid to re-examine everything you're doing around shooting. Even if you've been like me and you've been doing it for 40 years, and yeah, you've killed tons of animals and some monster bulls and you know, just gagger whitetails, but don't be afraid to tear it all down and to start over. It does work. It worked for me. It can work for you. So with that, thanks for watching this video. Hope you found some tidbits. Thanks for visiting Bowsite.com. Have a great 2023 bow hunting season.